Hello and welcome to Soul Healer Podcast. I'm your host, Ishita Pama. I'm a psychic, I'm a medium, and I'm an energy healer, and I'm here to help you find your answers, deep healing, and clarity and ease in your life. So if you're ready, let's go.
Hello and welcome to Soul Healer Podcast. I'm so excited because I have here with me a very divine, beautiful being, Shriyanka. She is here to empower you, empower the unique, and help you find your inner peace. And she will tell us a lot about her journey, but also all the ways that you can tap into your own inner healing. And we know that's what Soul Healer is all about. So, Shriyanka, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's such an honor.
Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got started and all of the work that you do.
Okay. That's a very loaded question. So I'll do my best to consolidate. I grew up in Minnesota. I grew up as a Buddhist. My mom is Sri Lankan, my dad is American. So growing up as a Buddhist in a suburban community in Minnesota really shapes you because it's very there's a lot of people who go to church, not the temple. So I think that had a really big impact on how I showed up in the world at that time. And of course, I internalized a lot of that. And I learned that a lot of my growth and a lot of my questions would have to be answered from within because there wasn't much in the outside world that was doing that for me. Fast forward quite a bit, I ended up starting to get sleep paralysis when I was about 17 years old. And around that same time, I was reading some books about past lives and hypnotherapy and all the things that I've always been interested in. And with the sleep paralysis, I was realizing that my what it felt like was my soul was coming out of my body or something was going on like that. I didn't know at the time. It was very frightening, very scary, but I made it through. And I ended up traveling to Australia when I was 19 to go to uni. And I'm here now, 10 years later, I'm still here. But from Australia, I came to the Sunshine Coast, which is actually a very, very big hub for a lot of spiritual people. It was actually extremely mind-opening and heart-opening that I could finally be in a place where I could express myself exactly as I've always wanted to. So, so it really helped me blossom. I've learned so much more about the things that I was interested in. And I continue my uni degree in environmental science and sustainability, very different than what I'm doing now, but it gave me a good base. And eventually around 2020, March 2020, when I also have my Saturn return, which is a crazy time to have your Saturn return. um, I ended up realizing I was reading one of Joe Dispenza's books, and I was like, do you know what? I had this thought. Why isn't this what I do? Like, not necessarily what Joe Dispenza does, but like, why don't I why don't I teach people about the things that I'm actually interested in? And why don't I discover my own ways and tools on how to get to this point? Why don't I document my own journey? So I started showing up on Instagram. I started doing breath coach training, meditation teacher training, yoga teacher training, all of that stuff. And that really got me into this world. Hired some mentors, some coaches, and did a lot of inner work. And that's just where I'm at today. That I've been channeling a lot of really beautiful information through my writing, which has been one of the biggest points in my journey so far. A lot of what I used to listen to other people tell me, I'm now getting from inside through writing. So that's the next step on my journey. That's where I'm at now.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I I just wonder, like, how did you have that awareness that there was something that you couldn't have gotten answers from as a child when you were in the environment that you were in? Because it's really hard for us sometimes to understand that we are probably not going to get the answers in a place that's not in alignment with us. So, what did you do? How did you get that awareness to even know that, maybe my answers are within and not around me?
Wow, no one's ever asked me this question. When growing up, thankfully, my mom taught me about Buddhism. And with Buddhism, there's a lot of contemplation, meditation, and um, all of that very interesting stuff that we all are interested in now. And I think because that was planted in my consciousness, that was starting to blossom, like just as a child. I did not sit in meditation like I do now as a child. It wasn't even close to that. But I think I was I was encouraged to go inward a lot. And also, I don't know, a lot of people don't believe in astrology. I believe in astrology. I'm an Aquarius. I have a lot of Aquarius placements, and I feel like it's an Aquarius thing to just be
I love
like,
that.
let's look inside, you know? Bigger
Absolutely.
picture, but also inside. So I think it was just a really good mix of my environment and what I was born into. So good karma. Thank you, universe, for that.
I love that. And so, when you are working with clients, what is
Mhm.
your favorite modality to use? Because clearly you have so many different ways you can go about healing and working with people.
Mhm. Well, it really depends on the client because we're all at different levels of what we need in life. So there's some clients that I have that just really need the basics met. Like you can't actually do the deep inner work unless you have your pillars of basic needs, which I call 5 pillars of basic needs, which are food, shelter, water, light, like sunlight, and sleep. And if you're finding that these are a little bit off in your life, that's going to greatly impact the rest of the modalities that you might be doing. Like you can't actually do them with the fullness that they require. So there's that. There's also the whole idea of, maybe I'll try this one and I'll try that one and I'll try that one, just like 40% each one of them. And it's only 40% because you're doing them spread over 2 weeks, like really sparingly. What if you just did one practice 100 or 90% and see how you went with that? So that really changes for everyone. My favorite thing is to get people to go inward and figure out what their homeostasis is, figure out um what their most regulated state is. And I call this your anchor. Know where your anchor is and know what, if you get thrown outside of that anchor point, you have a line that you can pull yourself back to your anchor. So it's always coming back to your anchor and having that, because from there as well, you can start to branch out into something like shadow work and actually look at your limiting beliefs and see how you can communicate differently. And you're not actually going to just completely get down and shut down on yourself. You can have that line to pull yourself back to your anchor and be like, oh, that was a bit of a journey. Maybe I'll try that again next time. I'll try that again next week, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, for you, I mean, clearly we've had quite a few years ahead of us and b- behind us that have been really, I guess, challenging for humanity. What are modalities that you use to heal?
I'm really big on meditation personally, though I don't always recommend it to my clients. So I just want to say that first and foremost, because sometimes even for me, it's meditation is not the best option. So I'd say meditation and dance and energy work. Like my dance is a lot with energy work and just kind of playing with the energy that I feel around me. Um, and and I think that's kind of the duality of masculine with the meditation and feminine with the dance, and having a balance with those two things has been really helpful for me. And also nature. Another one too is prayer. These four things are actually really, really big for me. Like prayer is huge, huge for me. I
I
love
love
praying.
that. What, so, I mean, everyone prays differently. So, what does that look like for you?
Well, I pray all the time. Like I actually live my day to day in prayer. So if I'm having a drink of water or I'm eating a meal, I'll say like thank you so much and wish that this is going to be good for my body and that other people around the world, so maybe someone who doesn't have a meal is going to just spontaneously get a meal. And I just imagine something like that happening. Or um sometimes a prayer could actually be me sitting and putting my hands on my heart, putting my hands in prayer, and just asking for some guidance, asking for some help, asking for protection. Sometimes I sit there and I am crying with tears of gratitude and just saying thank you. And I do this almost every day. If I ever get worried about something, if I get scared or I feel like something isn't going to work, I pray almost immediately, and I just ask for that to be I ask I actually say that I'm going to surrender to this moment now. I'm surrendering to you, universe, and I trust you completely. Just please help me in surrendering. Like please let this be easy for me.
Amazing, because it's a great reminder for all of us to know that we can ask and we are supported and we can live our life in a prayer like that, because a lot of us believe that we're alone on this journey, and that's not the truth. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us, because I'm sure someone listening, or many of us listening, can remember that that can be for us too. I want to know, what do you feel like inner peace is?
I love this question. Do you know how many people have been asking me this lately? It's really interesting. I think this answer changes a lot actually for me. And I I personally recently went through a really challenging last couple of months from like Ju from about June to September for me. Emotionally was very, very hard. Very hard. And I felt that even throughout that, there was some type of peace that was being carried with me, even though my emotional state was so like up and down, and also not, I mean, not even up and down, it was just very rocky. Um, so from that experience, I'd say that inner peace is acceptance. For a large part of inner peace is acceptance, and being able to trust with openness and surrender. And the more you can let go of the control, the more at peace you will be. It's inner peace is also trust too, then, right? It's trust in the universe in that way, or God, or nature, or the source, the divine, whatever you like to call it.
I love that. That's a great reminder, because I will say it feels like some days in this world, a lot of us can feel like we are struggling with trust within the world, but also ourselves. So that's a great reminder that we can find our inner peace and we can get back to that, because that's what you do. That's what you coach people into doing.
Yeah.
in all your modalities. What have you found, I guess, what is a special story or maybe like a special experience that you've had like around working with the client and their own inner trust and their inner peace?
Oh, I'm just thinking right now of a client that I had who, when she first came to me, I've actually been working with her for a long time. She's just continuously extended her time with me. And um, it's been almost a year that we've worked together. And when we first started working together, she was extremely shy. She was very much in the people pleasing mode, like just wanting to make sure that everyone around her was safe. And that's the way she grew up. She was the youngest sibling. Her whole family sort of controlled her. All of her friends controlled her. They didn't ever think about what she wanted, and that's just how she perceived herself. And through doing this work, this real like starting from the basics and learning, and then finally learning the trust piece later, because it doesn't always land straight away, especially when we're having crazy stuff happening to us or people we know or the world. We're turning on the news and seeing everything that's happening. It's really hard to find that trust. So that's when we start with the basics. And we started with the basics with her. We started planting seeds of trust, showing her eventually that over time, like, look, just do a trust building exercise with the universe for this very small thing. And it could be something to do with manifestation. It could just be something to do with letting go of control. It looks many different ways, really. And eventually now she's at the point where she has gotten promotions, multiple promotions in her job. She has healed her relationship with her partner, and she actually has created really strong boundaries around friendships, and she's starting to call in the people who actually really matter to her. And like all throughout that whole period, she knew this element of trust was at work, and things would happen. There would be ups and downs, just like there are in all of our lives. There's always going to be ups and downs, and you can either grab on, hold on as tightly as you can and say, no, I don't want this to change. No, I don't want this to go away from me. Or you can just, like, if it's being forced out of your hand, just let it and be like, okay, well, that's not meant for me. And then you eventually get to this point, like, she feels at peace now. She feels like she can handle anything now. And I think that is one of the most beautiful gifts that you can ever give yourself, is to let go.
I love that. Oh, that sounds like a beautiful story. It sounds like being in vibrational alignment to
Mm,
attract the life that you really want. I love that. It sounds like that's what she was doing by being in this trust and finding her anchor. I love that.
mhm.
Sounds like she just kind of up leveled and up leveled and up leveled what she knew she could have.
Exactly.
I
That's
love
exactly it.
so when you find moments of like struggling with this trust or inner peace, what do you do? Because I know a lot of us do that. And we have modalities. A lot of us have modalities and in trying to come back to ourselves, but sometimes it's just hard. So what do you do?
Mm. Well, I think a really important piece to this is there is a big element of prayer, and then there's also the aligned action.
Mm,
And taking action is one of those things that I think a lot of people might miss because it's not always a fun thing to do. But it actually can be really, really fun, especially when you pray or set an intention. So I usually say prayer or intention. Like, you intention is a very internal thing. You can just set a strong intention for yourself, or you can pray and ask for higher guidance. And if you pray or set an intention for wanting to take aligned action on the next best step for you in whatever project you're doing or whatever part of your journey you're on struggle street with, you just ask for that and say, I'm setting an intention now to either within the next few hours or the next day to take the best next step for me on this journey, and to keep taking those big steps, and to keep being intentional, and to, really, really put that momentum and that motivation into what you're doing, because we can sit back and relax and just, surrender and say, okay, universe, go for it. But it's not going to go for it if you're not taking action, because your action is the giving. You need giving to receive. You need to have that divine flow of energy. And giving could also be your gratitude. So you might be working, receiving, but then also then it stops, and the energy starts to get imbalanced because you're just giving, receiving all of this work, but there's no gratitude there. So then you start to feel like, wait, something in my life is missing. Do I just need to work more? No, you just need to be a little bit more grateful about what's happening in your life right now. So it's a long-winded answer to say aligned action and gratitude. That's the giving part in order to actually receive what you want.
I love that.
What you're needing help with.
That's really interesting that you say that, because I think a lot of us understand aligned action. We understand intellectually the giving and receiving, but I loved when you said the intention or the energy of gratitude must be in what you're doing when it's in a giving and receiving process, because it completely changes the dynamic of what you can receive and the amount you can receive, and how much you feel like you're deserving of receiving too, or giving, or what your value is even. So I love that completely. Thank you for that reminder.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So I guess for you, what brings you the most joy in the work that you do?
I'd say the most joy is that, when I first started this whole journey, even back in 2020, when I first started my first meditation class, I was doing 1 or 2 classes a week, every week for 2 years. Loved it. My only intention with that was, I just want to help one person. I just want to help one person. And that is actually still, honestly, my intention. That is my minimum. I do really just want to deeply help one person, and holding that and being so holding that so closely to my heart has actually led me to where I am today, where I am helping 100,000, if not more, people. And I think my favorite part of all of this is the fact that there's so much magic tied to your heart, to my heart, and to all of our hearts. I feel so connected to my heart when I do this work. I feel so grateful that I can set little intentions like this and see it just fully magnetized to the greatest level that I couldn't have ever imagined before. And yeah, it's something that it's one of the reasons why I am so strong in my message to follow where your soul is guiding you, because that's what I did. And I started from ground zero, just only now 4 years ago, a little bit less than 4 years ago. And it has gotten me so many incredible opportunities because I just trusted, even when I didn't have the money, when I didn't have the time, when I didn't have the energy, when I didn't think I even had the ideas or the vision for it. I just kept going and kept trusting in it, and it's brought me to this point. There's a lot of magic in it. I think the magic, the love, the wisdom that comes through all of that, being able to help people.
That's huge. That's really huge because we're all in it together and we need to be able to know where we can go to get that support, but also know that we can get ourselves through it too when we trust
Mm.
ourselves and when we follow our heart and our uniqueness. I love that. If someone is struggling with that, so I'm sure there's people listening who are feeling like, well, okay, great. Like this is what I feel like my heart is telling me to do. What would their first step be if their heart's desire is just an idea right now? What would you say to them?
I like to create a little bit of structure around it, because when we're in that place, we're in the feminine, right? We're in this ideas phase where there's a lot of creative energy going around in the void of, and that emptiness of nothing. Like, you never know what's going to be created from that. So what if we created a blueprint, a guide for how you're going to discover what that is? And it doesn't have to be, a step-by-step plan that is months into the future. That's not at all what I mean, because usually that doesn't even work. Let's say you have a future idea of what you want. You want some freedom, you want some peace in your life. Right now, you don't really feel like that. You feel like you're stuck in a job, but you have a few things that are kind of piquing your interest. You're like, well, I actually really like to talk to people, and I'm also really interested in this subject. So, what are two ways that you can do a little bit more of that in your life? How can you create a little bit of structure in your schedule to include that? And then just see where it takes you. And I'll give you an example from my own life. Like, one huge thing that got me started was I was actually working at a dive shop, like scuba diving shop, for many years. And after my whole awakening process, where I was like, wait, I don't have to do this. I can do anything I want. I was like, well, how am I going to get there? My first step was actually going to applying for jobs at spas, because I was like, okay, that's a really entry level place that I can get into the health and wellness field. So I started applying at spas, and at the time I wasn't actually applying to be a practitioner of any kind or a technician or anything. I just wanted to get my foot in the door somewhere, because that was for some reason that was the next logical step, or the next step that I was feeling drawn to. I think it was a lot to do with where my soul was drawing me. I remember applying to this one place and asked them if they needed help with their social media, because that was something that I was doing for many years before that, which also was a stepping stone for me, of course. And at the time, they said no, pretty much straight away. But luckily, when I stepped in that day, it was actually when I was walking home from work. I happened to run into the owner of the place, and though he said no, he ended up calling me a few days later and asking if I still needed work, and if I was still looking for work. Ended up working there, and almost immediately he had the idea for me to teach classes and meditation classes there. I did not ever put those two things together, but that's just what ended up happening. And I started getting all of my experience with teaching meditation, all of my experience with public speaking in that sense, all of my experience with channeling, because a lot of my meditations are channeled, and helping people in general. And I think I think that was actually one of the most pivotal moments of my life. And that was so spur of the moment. And that was just me saying, okay, what can I do to bring more of this in my life? Because right now, I'm not feeling like I'm in an aligned place. And even though that's not like not me being a coach on Instagram, it's still like, I actually really like the idea of me working in the spa industry. And look where it's gotten me now. And being a coach on Instagram is actually not even the place that I see myself being. Also see this as a huge stepping stone to the next step, which I am so excited to blossom into, but also I'm very excited to enjoy this present moment as I see it right now and be in this journey. So for those of you who are listening and watching that are like, okay, well, I don't know what to do next. I'm stuck in a job. I was stuck in a job too. My hours were crazy and my soul felt like it was getting sucked out of me through this job. I know what that's like. And if you just introduce even the smallest passion projects that you commit to, they will take you somewhere else. And you just keep going with those, even if you only have half an hour to do it. Just do it consistently and be open to creating more time and for creating that structure in your life of how you're going to make it to that point. You're taking time to draw each line, and you might just be drawing one line for a month. Okay, that's fine. We don't know what this path is going to hold for us, and we have to have that element of trust, but also taking the action.
I love it. That's amazing. It's a great reminder because it can be overwhelming, but if we take it in bite-sized chunks and we let our heart feel it out and we dip our feet in the water, suddenly we have more and more courage to keep continuing to be fearless and listen to our heart.
Mm,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
And I also want to add one more thing that has been really big for me, especially lately. It's taking the bigger leaps when you know it's time to take bigger leaps. I think that's a really important piece because you can get into this flow where you're like, okay, well, I'm taking these baby steps right now and it is kind of getting me somewhere, but there will come a time where you just have to say no to the thing that you did for so long and got you to that certain point. Like I had to leave the meditation the weekly meditations, even though that's something I loved, I just knew that it's time for me to leap into something else so I could focus more on Instagram. And there's trade-offs sometimes. I also had to take the leap into hiring a coach, which was massive for me at the time because usually when you're in this place, you don't feel like you are worth spending money on, like you don't feel like you're worth an investment. And I think that was one of the bigger hurdles for me to go over. And it is for a lot of people. We always have these wounds around self-worth. But if you can prove to yourself that you are worth it, you are worth that investment, it might be a small investment in yourself at first, that is going to make such a big difference in the way you show up in the world. Like I can't even begin to describe to you the difference it has made just in investing increasingly in more and more coaches that I feel aligned with. I show up differently in the world because of it. And it's not like I'm telling everyone, oh yeah, I invested in these guys and these guys. It's not because of that. It's because it's for me. I know that I'm doing something for myself. So it doesn't have to be coaches. It doesn't have to be mentorships, but if you want to be on Instagram and you're working on a phone that's breaking down, get yourself a new phone. It's going to make a massive difference in your energy and in the way you look at it, the way you look at your Instagram and how you're showing up on there.
I love that because it is super important to know that we are worth it and our world really does reflect back to us what we're feeling inside. So you're absolutely right. If you're going to be on social media, you need that phone. You need to
Mm.
make that investment to be able to keep going and to grow leaps and bounds. If you're putting in leaps and bounds, you're going to get out leaps and bounds. So I love that. Thank you for this amazing talk. I'm so excited to have you on here. And also I want everyone to know, what are the ways that people can work with you, Shriyanka? What are you offering? And how can they get in touch?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. I am available on Instagram and I'm available from my website as well. I plan to start a YouTube channel later on in this year when my time is freed up a little bit with my other projects. So you can catch me on there depending on when you are listening to this and watching this. And the main program that I offer is called Living with Soul. And Living with Soul is a 3-month group mentorship with an option to do one-on-one with me. And we start from the basics, work our way all the way up. It actually goes through the energy centers of the body, is the way that the whole thing is structured. So that's basically the energetics of every phase of the program that we go through. And there's a lot in that. So if you have any questions about that, I am so open to answering questions for you. And I also have some entry level courses and group spaces that you can join the main one is called Soul, and that stands for Sending Our Universal Love. So we're sending the universal love to each and every one. And I am working on getting that space shifted over into more of a community space. So depending on also when you're listening to this and when you're talking to me, eventually it may be a little bit different. So just ask me questions and we'll see what I've got for you.
Amazing. And then you're on Instagram at sunripened_soul. Is that right?
Yep, Sun Ripened Soul. That's me.
Amazing. Okay. Well,
Heaps of
thank
great
you,
content.
Shriyanka. This was so amazing. I'm so glad you were on, and I can't wait for everyone to listen. Thank you for your wisdom, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so, so much. It was such a pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Soul Healer Podcast. If you resonated with this episode, then I encourage you to click on the links in the description so you can step into deep healing and transformation. Until then, I'll see you in the next episode of Soul Healer.